Good morning. I really wish we were together in the sanctuary today singing boldly, but I hope you'll join me on our songs here. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are a part of me. You are the face of hope. I hold you in my heart. You are a light for me. You are the face of hope. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. Hand in Hand was written by Jayanthi Kyle, who's a Minneapolis singer and songwriter. She wrote this in 2014 after Eric Garner was choked to death by a policeman. The words are a little bit adapted here. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. But while our sisters ain't equal and our brothers can't breathe. Hand in hand with our families, we will fill these streets. Oh, our sisters are marching with us. There go our brothers, they are marching with us. There go our fathers, they are marching with us. There go our mothers, marching on until the people are free. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. But while our sisters ain't equal and our brothers can't breathe, hand in hand with our families, we will fill these streets. Hey there, policeman, we can't breathe. Hey there, policeman, no, we can't breathe. Hey there, policeman, no, we can't breathe. Lay down your weapons and your badges and listen to us. Oh, the day's gonna come when we won't march no more. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. But while our sisters ain't equal and our brothers can't breathe, hand in hand with our families, we will fill these streets. Hey, Mr. Governor, are you marching with us? Can I see a mayor marching with us? Wanna get a senator marching with us? Come join our families as we march toward equality. Oh, the day's gonna come when we won't march no more. The day's gonna come when we won't march no more. But while our sisters ain't equal and our brothers can't breathe, hand in hand with our families, we will fill these streets.
Good morning. Welcome everyone to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are so grateful today to share this space with you. Our service participants today include Carol Coet, Reverend Jack Gady, Amy Peterson Derrick, and we're supported by Reverend Sarah Goodman, Anna Garris, and Aaron Scott. This morning we are grieving and we are gathering our power, that we might be one by one and as a congregation all together, a force for good in our broken world. Months ago, we invited two of our members to speak this morning, continuing the long tradition here of listening to spiritual journeys unfolding in a service called This I Believe. And after much discernment in recent days and in recent hours, we decided to go forward with our plan. So in a little while, we'll hear with gratitude reflections from two members, both recorded a week ago. And this morning, in music and silence, in singing and prayer, we will also bear witness to our grief, our rage, our confusion in these times of trouble. The times were troubled long before this past Monday, make no mistake. But on this end of this long week, our hearts are heavy and broken, and it's so good to be together, conjuring hope. This coming week, we'll offer several opportunities for you to gather with us, your ministers, and to be together with each other to share what's on your heart and how it is with your spirit. Aaron is posting those links in the chat box here, and we will send the information to you tomorrow morning in the e-news. We'll gather tomorrow afternoon, Monday, in the ministry drop-in time, and also on Tuesday night. Please come. We'll begin those conversations for vigil and reflection later today, actually, in the Cyber Social Hour. I hope you'll join us right after the service for a chance to be in small groups, to hold each other and hear each other. Aaron's posting a link to that as well. Finally, I want to say in advance that our offering today will be given to community organizations on the ground in Minneapolis, working to bring food, medicine, essential supplies to neighborhoods where so many businesses have been shuttered and closed. We are heeding the call from Black clergy to be part of the repair of the city. You can text to give, just like every week, or you can send a check and we will get it where it needs to go. You'll see that information on a slide also and in the chat. I'm telling you now so you can grab your phone or your checkbook and be ready for the offering a little later. We need to show up with generosity today. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve this world in love.
Come into this space which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this space where we can heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this space where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this space. Together we make it a holy space, and welcome. Before I light the chalice this morning, I want you to take a moment to find a candle and join me in this simple and powerful ritual. In fact, if you want to take a moment every day to light the candle, you can join me in this simple practice every day at noon. I've been taking a moment to memorialize and honor those lost to COVID-19. And I will expand this practice to honor and continue to fuel my passion for the struggle against police brutality and toward racial justice. On this month's theme of imperfection, this morning's chalice lighting is for imperfect people with imperfect rage, imperfect communities with imperfect histories, imperfect love and imperfect protest, imperfect service and imperfect connections. Fortunately, perfection isn't the goal, but may we aspire toward healing, toward repair, toward wholeness, toward community. Please take 30 seconds of silence with me, but first, please say his name. Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Over many weeks this spring, our choir has been preparing for us a beautiful arrangement of the hymn, Circle Round for Freedom. We've heard and sung this music so many times. It's held us through vigils and memorial services, through victories and losses, reminding us, restoring us to the understanding that the circle of freedom is for everybody. The circle of love and justice is for everyone. The circle of life will only be whole if everybody's in it. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace for all of us in prison. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children, for the children of all children. Keep the circle whole. Our choir made this recording several weeks ago, directed by Baxter Cuneo with technical help from Steve Goranson.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
In our religious education programs, the time that we spend together is anchored in ritual. With children and youth, we take the time to narrate through these rituals so that together we can understand what they mean. We can grasp their power. When we light the chalice, it calls us together into a sacred space. And we know that when we share our joys and sorrows, we are called to listen and to be present for one another. When we take time to build altars, we are creating a space, we say, to hold reminders of who we are and of what we value, reminders of what we hold high. We might place special items that help to tell our story, items that make tangible where we have been, lessons we have learned, people and communities that we love and that love us. We might add a picture of a beloved person, or even someone we did not know at all, so that we can remember them and remember to honor them. We might add stones and flowers and candles to represent our prayers, our deepest sorrows, our joy, our anger, and our hope. We might write down our prayers on slips of paper or write words or names to remind us of important people and values. Sometimes we might have moments where words and prayers do not come so easy. And so instead, maybe we'll light a candle, a light to help us find our way or remind us of really hard work that we have ahead of us. Our altars, we remind our children, are places that you can come back to whenever you are feeling lost or sad or angry, or when you just need a reminder of where we come from and what we together should hold high. These are the spaces, we tell our children and youth, where we place reminders of who we are and what we value, so that when we are ready to leave our altar, the way maybe seems a little more clear. And so, reverently, earnestly, and playfully, our children will gather items, stones and sticks and candles and pictures of loved ones, words written on paper, names written on paper, and they'll place them lovingly on an altar. We talk about what each of these items represent and what they remind us of and how. And we talk about how when we create an altar all together, our classroom altar or any altar in a community, it is for all of us. We talk about how we make space for everyone's stories and hold space for sorrows and hopes and anger, and that by building an altar together, we are committed to the work of listening, making space, and then holding high the stories of all of us, the sorrows and anger and the hopes of all of us. We're going to sing together.
We Won't Be Silent Anymore was written by Yara Allen, who's the theomusicologist for the National Poor People's Campaign. We've adapted the words here again a little bit today to fit our current situation. I hope you'll sing with me. Somebody's hurting Black people, and it's gone on far too long. It's gone on far too long. Well, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting Black people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's hurting Black families, and it's gone on far too long. Well, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting Black families, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Somebody's choking Black people, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Well, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's choking Black people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. No, we can't be silent anymore.
These words were posted by our beloved colleague, the Reverend Ashley Horan. She is the organizing strategy director for the Unitarian Universalist Association, and she lives in Minneapolis. George Floyd was murdered by police on Monday, and his killers are still walking free today. My beloved neighborhood in Minneapolis is burning tonight. The two of these facts are directly and unequivocally linked, although white supremacy is already girding its gears to distract us from the first by labeling the second as looting and riots. By promising that if the 4 officers who willingly snuffed the life out of George Floyd are all indicted, the problem will somehow be solved. It's true, 1 officer has been taken into custody, but a different truth is this. The uprising that is happening right now is not just about George Floyd. It is about George Floyd and Jamar Clark and Philando Castile, about Ahmaud Arbery and Nina Pop and Breonna Taylor and Tony McDade, about Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Oscar Grant and Rika Boyd and Michael Brown, about Rodney King and Fred Hampton and Malcolm X. And it is also about decades and generations and centuries of everything that has led us here. About the Willie Lynch letter and the destruction of Black Wall Street, and Tuskegee and the Fugitive Slave Act and Bloody Sunday and the bombing of the Move House and the transatlantic slave trade, and how COVID-19 is exponentially more deadly to Black people than it is to any other group. As I watched the 3rd Police Precinct burn tonight and watched some of the people in my social networks comment with shock and horror, asking, how could this have happened? All I can think to myself is, how could this not have happened?
I will not engage in a conversation about looting and rioting and who does and doesn't approve of these tactics. To do so is a trap, a distraction, a faithless and cowardly ruse to get us to look away from confronting the absolute brokenness and devastation white supremacy and capitalism have sown throughout our history and our present. Instead, I want to speak directly to this moment as a Unitarian Universalist, as an organizer of faith communities, and as a white person. To my Black family and siblings and comrades, you don't need my words, but I will still say aloud that I am praying for you tonight, for your babies and your grandparents and your beloved dead, recent and long gone. I am casting spells of protection and love around you. I am trying to listen to your stories, your asks, your visions, your rage, and meet them all with an open heart and a willingness to act and a creative mind to move every resource and skill I can muster toward building a world that is more whole and free right alongside you. I see you, I love you, and soon, very soon, I am praying that you have access to spaces that foster your healing and joy and connection and repair. To my Indigenous siblings and non-Black beloveds of color, I know these are complex moments in which identity is both weaponized and invisibilized. I deeply trust that you are doing both what you need to do to tend to your tender hearts and to show up in solidarity with our Black kindred. I see you, I love you. I am praying that you also have access to spaces that foster your healing and joy and connection and repair. I'm praying for you, too.
To my white family and siblings and comrades, specifically my white Unitarian Universalist siblings in faith, what is happening tonight is not about other people, other communities, other institutions. Framing it that way will only make us armchair quarterbacks as we turn away from the things we are responsible for doing. But I want to speak specifically to what we can do as people who are part of religious communities. Here it is. Let's get serious together starting now. Let's not spend another minute fretting about upsetting people by using the words white supremacy. Let's have genuine conversations about making reparations with our endowments and committing to never call the police, ever. Let's develop the skills and the comfort with conflict to recognize bad behavior that springs from white supremacy culture among us, to circle around it, cut it off, and shut it down without delay. Let's get real about the resources, human, infrastructural, financial, that we have access to as individuals and as faith communities, and get to the work of redistributing them. Let's move some serious money to Black liberation organizing. Let's not spend another minute practicing a wishy-washy universalism that means all beliefs and behaviors are acceptable, or pretending that the call to dismantle white supremacy culture within our faith is some kind of tyrannical plot to curb freedom of conscience and belief. And let's create spaces that foster our own healing and joy and connection and repair. I'm praying for us too. Blessings, love, and solidarity. Ashley Horan. Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? Spirit of life, Holy One, known to us most intimately as breath, the very breath of life. Spirit moving on the wind, rustling the trees, rippling the water, filling every thirsty lung with sweet spring air, except the lungs of George Floyd. May he rest in power, rest in peace. For us, the time for resting is not now, not for us who still draw breath, tired as we are this anxious, awful spring, this anxious, awful week. The time for resting is not now. Spirit, wake us, shake us from our sleeping, and strengthen our resolve. Yesterday, I learned that when you charge somebody with murder in the 3rd degree, part of the charge against them may be described as, quote, evincing a depraved mind. That's a legal term. I read it in the warrant issued Friday. Evincing a depraved mind. If that's a crime, then every aspect of our common life, our economy, our history, the systems of so-called government and so-called justice and so-called education, every social construct that defines us as a people, American people, is guilty as charged. Depravity. Every aspect of the white supremacy inside us and among us and everywhere around us, as if in the very air we breathe, is depraved, evincing a depraved mind and heart and soul and spirit and body politic. This is not about one officer or 4 officers. May they all be charged accordingly. This is not about them only, or the entire racist, sordid Minneapolis Police Department, or policing generally, which feels so often to communities of color here and everywhere like a military occupation. This is not about that only. When the people march, you sometimes hear, we sometimes cry. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. And so it is. Guilty as charged. This is larger than last Monday. Our grief is for George Floyd, and it is larger, deeper, older, wider. So many thousands gone. Spirit, we are weary, and our work has just begun. We are living in pandemic time. We have lived all our lives in pandemic time, no matter our age. Our parents, our grandparents, ancestors, all the way back, have lived and breathed this viral, lethal white supremacy, and each one of us unwittingly is a vector, a super spreader, a walking epicenter of contagion. It is passed to us in utero, in stories, in practices of privilege, which look to us like just the way things are, if we're white. For most of us, it is invisible. We're asymptomatic to ourselves. We don't even know that we're sick. So often we're so in denial, we just don't believe that our own negligence or ignorance could do any harm at all. Our own distance from the death out there, from the dying, protects us. Or so we want to believe. Spirit, abolish bad belief, faulty doctrine. Call us back to what we know. Till all of us are free, none of us is really free or whole or well or safe or sound. Call us back to what we know. Either Black Lives Matter or they don't to us. Call us back to what we know. Call us back to what we sing. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore, even if we don't know what to say this morning. Even if it comes out all wrong, we won't be silent. May we stay strong and bright in days ahead, eyes open, not closed, hearts open, wide open to the urgent needs and the urgent, brilliant leadership of our Black siblings, our siblings of color, Indigenous siblings. May we listen for their call when it comes from them, listen more than talk for once to what the people need. Help us, if we're white, to know that it is not for us to define what peaceful protest looks like. The rage and grief of centuries, the everlasting harm, is born in other bodies. And until justice flows like a river, till justice comes shouting and singing into the streets and the neighborhoods, till justice comes, there can be no peace. But we can name the difference between righteous revolution rising up and white power wreaking havoc. May we stay alert, awake, well aware, ever more keenly attuned to the presence of evil among us in the form of white denial, yes, but also and for real, white thugs, white gangs, white infiltrators, some from out of state, and frankly, some right here beside us all along, hidden in plain sight, well organized, well funded, and in every meme and tweet and text and every fire they set, evincing depraved mind. They are trying to break us, but this movement won't be broken because it's beautiful and the soul of it is so strong. We have seen this in abundance this past week. So much beauty. There isn't only wreckage. Spirit of life, holy breath and holy name, hold us now in the crucible of our moment. Crack us open, shake us awake, turn our broken hearts, our fear, our grief, our confusion into love and yet more love. May we who are still breathing be worthy of our breath. Amen. Our offering today is heading out to South Minneapolis and to other neighborhoods in the city in desperate need now and in the coming days of food and medicine and other essential supplies. So many stores and small businesses that people rely on every day have been shuttered and destroyed, and already Black churches and Black-led community organizations are working side by side to help. What were thriving neighborhoods last week have instantly become food deserts, and in the midst of this pandemic, it is an emergency. Here in our community, we have resources among us that people in other communities are counting on us to share. You can text to give right now, you can go to our website a little later, or you can send a check this week, a paper check. It won't be too late. So many of you have been asking me this week what we can do to help. This is one important thing.
They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. They say that freedom is a constant struggle. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long. Well, I must be free, I must be free. They say that freedom is a constant dying. They say that freedom is a constant dying. They say that freedom is a constant dying. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long. Well, we must be free, we must be free. They say that freedom is a constant mourning. They say that freedom is a constant mourning. They say that freedom is a constant mourning. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long. Well, we must be free, we must be free. They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. They say that freedom is a constant sorrow. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long. Well, we must be free, we must be free. They say that freedom is a constant hunger. They say that freedom is a a constant hunger. They say that freedom is a constant hunger. Oh Lord, we've struggled so long. Well, we must be free, we must be free.
We are honored to share with you the reflections of two members of our congregation. It felt important not to postpone these offerings even now. What we need right now, every one of us, is to anchor on what we each believe in, to find and to refine our faith, to put words to it, to discern the storyline, the story of our lives. That's the soil that your action is always rooted in, your belief. And that's the place where we begin and where we return. Action and reflection, round and round, that is the practice of liberation theology. It begins with the discipline of self-examination, reflection. For some, that's the discipline of prayer. For some, it's the discipline of writing or conversation. To search your heart. It's a joyful and demanding practice. Each of our speakers this morning has done this work for a long, long time, and the work they do to serve this world is evidence of the work they've done to grow their souls. Alan Hagstrom is a retired United Methodist minister who has served half his ministry in the parish setting and half in the healthcare setting, focusing on spiritual care, medical ethics, and bereavement. He served at Christ Church of Chicago, a Japanese-American UCC congregation, and then churches in Vermont, New York, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. His chaplaincy work was primarily in Stillwater, but also in other states. In our congregation, he served on the MLK Breakfast Committee, the Assistant Minister Search Committee, Theme Circles, the Third Thursday Group, and now part of the Care Convener team. Alan Hagstrom lives in Hugo.
Every person was a mystery. He knew now, having been a priest. The first reading today is from Annie Lightheart's The Second Music. Now, I understand there are two melodies playing, one below the other, one easier to hear, the other lower, steady, perhaps more faithful for being less heard, yet always present. When all other things seem lively and real, this one fades, yet the notes of it touch as gently as fingertips as the sound of the names laid over each child at birth. I want to stay in that music without striving or cover. If the truth of our lives is what it is playing, the telling is so soft that this mortal time, this irrevocable change becomes beautiful. I stop and stop again to hear the second music. I hear the children in the yard, a train, then birds. All this is in it and will be gone. I set my ear to it as I would to a heart. The second reading is from Changing Light by Nora Gallagher. Every person was a mystery. He knew now, having been a priest for 10 years. Almost every person had a secret. The secret was often tied up with each person's destiny, not to be confused with a preordained destination. No, it was more complex than that. It was as if each of us had another deeper life than the one being lived. It lies underneath our ordinary days, our errands, our doing of dishes, writing of letters, the making of money, like something moving, a lobster-like underwater. Every now and then, this hidden life surfaces, as if to enact itself, to bring something to fulfillment. Often this happens when it intersects with another. As the trees were budding and the flowers beginning to appear on the campus of the University of Chicago in early spring 1968, I walked with some anxiety across the campus green, over to a pastoral care class meeting at the University of Chicago Hospitals, where Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was interviewing patients who had been informed that they were dying. I remember watching in a room behind a one-way glass as the interviews occurred, and remembering that just a few years before I had been at my grandmother's bedside as she drew near her last breath inside a huge oxygen tent. That experience was my very first in being present when a person died, especially powerful, because Grandma Jackson was probably the person I felt closest to, then as a junior in high school, but all through my growing up years. While I sat beside her, I remember my internal response was to sing to myself the choral benediction I so often sang as part of the high school choir at my home church. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Then I went home and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote about what it was like to lose this lovely, gentle, caring person in my life. And I still have that emotional journal. As it turned out, that walk across the campus, that bedside vigil, and a few other early life experiences led to a major thread in my life: the search for meaning in the face of the realities of life and death. Since that walk, as pastor and as chaplain, I have sat by hundreds of bedsides and been blessed with the incredible beauty of the gratitude, intense love, and surprising hope so often found in those times. A little about my life story might be useful here. I am the grandson of 4 immigrant grandparents from central Sweden who left for this country in order to escape poverty, lack of promising work, and an intrusive, organized state religion. They all settled in Chicago in the late 1800s and early 1900s, finding the work they sought and joining the large Swedish immigrant neighborhoods of the city and its suburbs. I was really lucky to have my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all within easy walking distance in west suburban Chicago, some only a few doors down on the same block, others only a few blocks further away. Family life for me, as for many of them, was all tied up in a mainstream Methodist church, where it seemed faith was easily reconciled with science and intelligent thinking. That did not mean there were no forces of evil to contend with. There were for sure racial tensions in particular, and also anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, anti-anybody else who's different tensions. Looking back, I found myself a very mixed bag on a lot of those. Living 4 years at a liberal arts college in Northfield turned me around quite a bit. So did the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Robert Kennedy. My conservative political background soon gave way to anything but that in politics, and also challenged my fairly conservative beliefs in religion. Finding a respect for a radical Jesus, I decided that I would try a year in seminary instead of going on to prepare for teaching. So when Chicago Theological Seminary accepted me, I set my foot on a whole new territory that would stay with me the rest of my life. The seminar on death and dying was a foretaste of 40 years of ministry, half in small parishes as pastor, half in healthcare, chaplaincy, the longest of which was 17 years directing a community chaplaincy program in a variety of healthcare settings in Stillwater. During those years, I was truly excited to help start a hospice program, a community healthcare ethics advisory, grief support for adults, and another one for children, and a parish nurse program. With the dying and their families, I was in my element, so to speak. That didn't mean I became insulated from the power of emotion and excruciating pain of loss in such times. Far from it. I was often caught up in that pain and in need of counsel myself. But it has meant that I tend not to be afraid to face that with folks and join them in their journey. 14 years ago, while serving my last pastoral charge just across the river and up north a bit in Osceola, Wisconsin, I was working part-time with the Minnesota Center for Healthcare Ethics, leading workshops, would you believe, on preparing for a pandemic. And with church and community leaders, we were trying to envision what we would do if a pandemic came to pass. How would we hold worship services, conduct funerals, visit our parishioners, stay safe, stay alive, and help others to survive? As I have gone into hiding now from the pandemic that actually came to pass, I have run across those papers and discovered that I am living through what we tried so hard to imagine back in 2006. Only this time around, everything has happened so fast that there was truly little time for preparation. At the same time, back in 2006, my brother David and I sat at the bedside of our mother as she breathed her last in the Osceola nursing home, where she had lived for almost 3 years. Knowing how much she loved music, being an accomplished pianist, we put on a CD of hymns and other songs. As her breathing ceased, one of her favorites, Amazing Grace, began to play, celebrating the faith and life of this dear mother, friend, and mentor. Ironically, our very Swedish mother died on 7 May, the Norwegian Independence Day. So happily, she got her independence from pain, from the restraints of her physical life, and added profoundly, it seems to me, to the grace of what comes next. The issues of the meaning of life and death seem to have come front and center all of a sudden, even in the short time between when I agreed to do this talk and now. How things have changed, and how powerfully present that second melody Annie Lightheart described, and that mystery underneath the ordinary Nora Gallagher's priest saw, have become. I believe that the second melody, the mystery underneath the ordinary, has a lot to do with all that is sacred in our lives. It has to do with the love we feel, the hope we embrace, the peace we find. We find it here in the congregation as we care for one another, meet one another, even at a distance, hold one another in our thoughts and prayers, and savor one another's life expression, close by or even far away. There is a beautiful melody going on in us individually and as a beloved community. It is the mystery in which we can all find a place to cherish, to nurture, and most of all, to encourage that which is sacred as our primary focus. And enjoy and celebrate, of course, all those wonderful ordinary things that surround us. Annie said, I stop and stop again to hear that second music. And the priest said, every now and then this hidden life surfaces as if to enact itself, to bring something to fulfillment. And what is underneath the ordinary, beautiful life we live, even in the midst of all that is going on? I believe we are pointed in that direction every time we gather for worship and go about our life as a congregation. Hear the words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. May peace dwell within our hearts, and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will, and love of truth forever guide us. So be it. Go to it in gratitude and hope always. Thank you.
Alan, it is so good to hear your voice this morning and see your face. And I know that you're really there, not just in a recording. I know you're watching and listening. I think you can feel across the miles the love and thanks of your people. We're going to sing together. The hymn is How Can I Keep From Singing? Carol Nelson joined White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church in November of 2015. As a semi-retired primary care physician, Carol is the volunteer director of the nonprofit Rural Healthcare Initiative and makes annual trips to Sierra Leone. She lives with her husband Keith Henry on Birch Lake in White Bear Lake. They have 3 adult sons, Dan, Nate, and David, and 2 grandchildren, Nola, age 3, and Otis, 6 months. In our congregation, Carol has been an active member of the Sanctuary Committee, and she continues that work, companioning our family in St. Paul, and she serves on the Sunday Welcome team.
Good morning. Back on February 13th, I was asked to participate in the This I Believe service. As you know, COVID-19 was just emerging at that time, and now we're into the pandemic, which has changed our lives immensely. I'm not going to address it here, but I do believe that my faith helps me in times of uncertainty and that we will all emerge as a transformed community. Today I will share my faith journey with you from some of my earliest memories to what I believe today. I grew up in a small Danish community in rural northwestern North Dakota. Daneville Lutheran Church was the church of my childhood. All my grandparents had immigrated from Denmark, and my paternal grandparents homesteaded in the dry northwestern corner of North Dakota in 1907. Life was hard on the dry prairie, and church was very important to the homesteaders. My grandfather was the head carpenter for the team who built the Daneville Lutheran Church. They were the sad Danes as opposed to the happy Danes. The sad Danes were very serious or pious. They didn't allow dancing, alcohol, cigarettes, or gambling. My, how times have changed. My parents taught me important values such as honesty, working hard, helping others, and humility. And every Sunday, my parents would pack us into the Chevy and take us to church, to the Daneville Church in my earlier years, and later, when that closed, to the Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Westby, Montana, which was our closest town. In high school, I became the church organist. Growing up on a small cattle and wheat farm in northwestern North Dakota, I attended a country school until 5th grade and then went by bus to the big school in town. I was baptized as an infant and confirmed in the Lutheran Church. I graduated in 1970, 50 years ago, with a high school class of 13 other students. From my junior high days on, I had decided to become a doctor, as I rather naively believed that that was the most important thing to do in the world. I encountered a lot of resistance in the 1960s as a farm girl with this plan for my life, and that only fueled my determination. Back to my faith as a childhood, it was very Bible-based, fundamental, and I started questioning this as a teenager. But I would first like to share with you some of my favorite Bible quotes, which inspired me then as well as now. Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful, arrogant or rude. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. 1 John 4. God is love. If we love one another, God dwells deeply within us. And that is one of my most favorite verses. Matthew 25, which refers to feeding the hungry, welcoming the stranger, clothing the naked, and visiting the sick or in prison. And Jesus said, as you did it unto one of the least of these, you did it unto me. I attended a Lutheran liberal arts college, Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, where I was required to take religion and ethics classes. My first religion class included study of the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, their historical basis, how the books of the Bibles were written by many different men, often many years after the fact, and in different languages with many interpretations. Started seeing the Bible as a book of history and stories from which I could gain meaning and guidance, but not as literal truth. In 1974, I started medical school and attended various churches during that time. Living in St. Louis for 5 years, I was introduced to many new cultures and religions. I became a physician, but found that the practice of medicine was less than fulfilling. I married, had children, and we brought them up in the Presbyterian Church, from which none of us attend at this time. But I do believe it gave them a moral compass for their lives. In 2001, I had a life-changing experience. I was terminated from my job as a primary care physician at Health Partners in White Bear Lake, very unexpectedly, during a time of downsizing. The humbling experience shook me to the core because being a physician was a huge part of my identity and my purpose in life. So this led me to further question the faith of my childhood and to look for more answers and meaning. The job loss provided me time and opportunity to read about an emerging Christianity, different ways of understanding religion, the world, and humanity. No longer could I believe or even pretend to believe the fantastical stories of the Bible or recite the Apostles' Creed without feelings of being dishonest. Today, I'm going to share with you several of the writings that brought my faith journey here to WBUUC. It may have started with Marcus Borg, John Shelby Spong, or Rabbi Harold Kushner, but also with Presbyterian pastors Doug Throckmorton and Kathy Waugh, who some of you here remember. I'll quote some of these theologians. Marcus Borg, he was a Lutheran pastor who even went to the same college as I did and was from the Scandinavian heritage. He spoke about the emerging paradigm of Christianity and the Christian life as a life of relationship and transformation. That it affirmed religious pluralism, with Christianity being but one of the world religions. The Bible in the emerging paradigm is seen as historical, metaphorical, and sacramental. Then John Shelby Spong, an Episcopal priest, authored the national bestseller, Why Christianity Must Change or Die and Rescuing the Bible from Fundamentalism. I've read all his books. He described God as source of life, source of love, and ground of all being. He was a strong supporter for the ordination of gays and lesbian pastors and helped lead the way in his church. Rabbi Harold Kushner is best known for his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. However, it was his book, Living a Life That Matters, that really spoke to me. He talks about finding God in relationships between people and about how we all need to find purpose and meaning in our lives. Most recently, I've read God Revised, which is available here at our bookstore. And it talks about the understanding of God. The only way God plays an active role in time is through us. We are the presence of God in this world, the face of God, God's voice and hands. This requires us to believe that we are divine in human form. And this requires to have a faith that our experiences have genuine significance. Over the years of being an active participant in mainline Christian churches, I experienced cognitive dissonance. I couldn't believe the words said every Sunday, so it was a time for change. And 4 years ago, I became a member here at WBUUC, a place that is very welcoming, no matter what our religion, race, background, gender identity, or other identification is. It's a place of love, peace, and truth, where service is expected. Over the past decade, I have found an area of medicine that provides me the purpose and meaning that I really needed and that fit with my faith journey. It's the field of global and public health. Many of you know I volunteer with Rural Healthcare Initiative in Sierra Leone, Africa. It's a country of extreme poverty and lack of medical resources. But the people there are so much like us. Their families, their lives, their hard work, their wants, their needs. The organization doesn't provide charity care, but rather strives to be allies with the local healthcare workers to provide them resources that they do not have, to strengthen their medical work with trainings, to empower them to work together in mutuality and partnerships. So challenging and frustrating at many times, working in West Africa has been a life-changing experience for me and will continue to give me purpose for many years to come. This brings me to where I am today. I'd like to share with you what I do believe. I believe there's good and bad in all this, and let's just hope the good outweighs the bad. I believe that God is love. Love. That God is more of a concept or mystery than person. I believe that God is found in me, in relationships that are healthy and enriching. I believe my purpose in life is to do all the good I can for as long as I can do it, with my family as my first priority. I can do this through empowering others and working alongside them. I believe that heaven and hell occur right here on earth. They're not something for the afterlife, but for the right here and now. I believe that I live on in the people whose lives I've touched, my children and grandchildren, family, friends, patients, and people who have been able to make their lives a bit better. I believe in resurrection as transformation and rebirth. I respect other religions as long as they uphold human rights and dignity for other people. I believe that prayer changes things as long as it changes the person who is praying. And I believe that Jesus lived and died and is an example of living a selfless life, serving others and putting others first. And now I'd like to close with some of my favorite quotes. I will grab the sheet. Here it is. I keep this little book of my favorite quotes. This is from Desmond Tutu. Do your little bit of good wherever you are. It is those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. The next quote is from my husband's cousin who had just lost his son to a drug overdose. Everyone is fighting their own battle to be free from their past, to live in the present, and to create a meaningful future for themselves. Don't judge others. Have a heart. The idea that some lives matter less is the root of all that's wrong with the world. From Paul Farmer in Partners with Help. And the shortest quote is from Ellen DeGeneres: "Be kind." And now a more profound one from Dietrich Bonhoeffer: "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." And then Mother Teresa: "Do things for people not because of who they are, but because, or what they do in return, but because of who you are." And lastly, I'm going to end with a quote that I heard here at White Bear UUC from Victoria. And it applies to what's going on today in our lives that have been upset by the COVID-19 pandemic, but it applies to us throughout our lives: of service to others. Be bold, be brave, and be strong. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you, and I wish you all the best and stay safe and healthy.
Carol, thank you. We really needed to hear your words today, and your offering and the way you live your life, the way you have strung it together with such intention. It's a blessing on the world. I hope you can feel us loving you up across the interweb. Carol chose this next hymn as a bookend to her talk. We'll sing together, "Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire."
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet's soul turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell in our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us. Friends, dear ones, folks with love, passion, grief, rage, and power, thank you for joining us today. If you have not yet signed up for our email news, please do that. We send that out just twice a week, and that is all of our communications, including online gatherings, groups, circles of care. The vigil is taking place tomorrow and Tuesday. Also, since our service ran long today, our cyber social hour will start at 11:30 instead, so we have time to regroup and gather. Please join us for that. Call or write, ask for help, offer help. We are sending love from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Maple Street, and all of our locations. Stay strong, stay resilient, and stay connected. See to it, go to it, and so be it. Go in peace.
Sorrow, I'm left in this whole wide world, this whole wide world. Oh, no, I ain't got no hope, got no hope for tomorrow. I'm trying to make it heaven my home. Sometimes I just don't know which way to turn. Oh, I heard of a city called heaven. I'm trying to make it heaven my home. Sometimes I just don't know